Aviation fans, welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. Today we're going to take a look at a 1/500 scale Douglas DC-8-20 by Herpa. So this is what the box looks like. You can see we have the Eastern Airlines logo at the bottom left. And here's a picture of the real plane, which looks pretty nice. At the bottom, you can see that this is part of the Yesterday series that Herpa had about 10 years ago. And this is Herpa catalog number 513609. Comes with registration. Now at the back of the box, you can see that we have the original dimensions of the plane. It has a wingspan of 43.41 meters, a length of 45.87 meters, and a height of 12.91 meters. I think this was a Herpa Wings Club exclusive, which actually makes it a little bit rarer than the usual Herpa models. So let's unbox it. Now I managed to pick this up for 10 euros, which is an excellent price, although this being an old Herpa, it doesn't have as much detail as a Starjet's DC-8 would, but it does have new generation landing gear, as you'll see in a second. So here's the plane. And here it is, the 1/500 scale Herpa Eastern Airlines Douglas DC-8-20. So it's interesting. This plane isn't a McDonnell Douglas DC-8, but a Douglas DC-8. And the reason for that is because the McDonnell-Douglas merger happened in April 1968, and production of the DC-8 ran from 1958 to 1972. So for most of its life, only under the Douglas Aircraft Company, and just for 3 more years after the merger, under the McDonnell-Douglas brand. The DC-8 is a long-range, narrow-body jetliner, and as always, development of planes like these began because in the early 1950s, the U.S. Air Force wanted a jet-powered aerial tanker for refueling. But by 1954, they had lost the bid to Boeing and their KC-135 Stratotanker, which, by the way, still flies today. So 1 year later, after losing the bid in 1955, Douglas decided to turn the airframe into a civilian jetliner. And first flight happened just 3 years later in 1958, by which time, however, Boeing had beaten them again with the 707. But the DC-8 was certified just 1 year after the 707 was, and both planes remained close competitors for most of their production years, not just when it comes to the routes that they flew, or their range and stuff like that, but also to the interior, right down to the 6 abreast seating. Now this particular DC-8 is the -20, which is the shortest DC-8 variant, and the longer variants were known as the Super DC-8s. This DC-8-20 is in the Eastern Airlines livery. Together with Pan Am, Continental, and American Airlines, Eastern Airlines was one of the big 4 that existed until 1991 and were operating out of Miami, Florida. Eastern Airlines held 16 of these DC-8-21s in their fleet, which is around half of all -20 variants that were ever built. So the Eastern Airlines livery is a befitting one for the -20, I'd say. And they were introduced in 1960 and remained in service until 1979, outlasting the longer fuselage variants by a couple of years. So we'll start our review by taking a look at the port side of the aircraft at the L1 door, and you can see that it has a porthole and a window right next to it. As a matter of fact, if you look at the bottom, you can also see that there's a number, which is probably part of the aircraft registration number. We then, of course, have the window line and the Eastern branding along with the logo of the carrier. Got an American flag here, right past the two emergency exits in the middle. And the blue window line is trimmed by a darker blue window line, which is classic for the Eastern livery, and this continues all the way to the back of the plane. Now, before we reach the back, we also have here the registration of the plane, which reads November 8615. Moving to the back, we have the tail, where the hockey stick-like livery of Eastern curves upward. Now you can tell here that the vertical stabilizer is made out of plastic while the fuselage is made out of metal, so if you're unlucky, this might yellow over time. What is nice though is that we get a little bit of extra detail for the base of the horizontal stabilizers. And looking at them, you can see that they have a basic level of detail. You can see the elevators right there. And now taking a look at the wings of the plane. They are bare metal. They don't really have any emergency exit markings or stuff like that on them, but we do get nice details carved onto the wing, such as the flaps and the air brakes, ailerons, all that good stuff. So yeah. And taking a look at the engines of the DC-8-20, you can see that these are low bypass engines, which means most of the air is combusted. They don't seem to have any fan blade detailing inside them though, so they're pretty plain in terms of overall details. But they're supposed to represent JT4A3s, which would give it a range of 7,500 kilometers. Looks nice for a quadjet. And taking a look at the front of the aircraft, you can see that the DC-8's front looks quite similar to the MDs that came later. It does have eyebrow windows, just like the Boeing 737s. And the cockpit windows have silver frames, which is nice. We also get a black radome and a little bit of black underneath the cockpit windows to prevent glare. So overall, this looks pretty realistic. And here's a look at the other side of the DC-8-20. You can see that we have cargo doors, two of them actually at the front, as well as two at the back. And I can see the registration here at the back, as well as that little bit at the front. And of course, we also have landing gear doors. And naturally, these scale-accurate landing gear also look pretty nice. Now let's take a look at the bottom of the plane. You can see that the details here are pretty basic. I mean, there's really not much going on. You get some more details for the flaps. And the back of the engines also do have a little bit of exhaust cones going on, which is nice, because I don't think that Herpa made those on the Boeing 707. So yeah. So I hope you guys liked my review of the 1/500 scale DC-8-20 in the Eastern livery, which is a pretty iconic retro livery. And if you're interested in more plane reviews like this, I do have some other ones here as well, so you might want to check those out, particularly that of the competitor of this plane, the Boeing 707. So I'll see you there, and take care, have a wonderful day. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.